All right, dear friends, thinkers, gamers, welcome back to the Tales of Praxis stream. Sorry for kicking off a few minutes late, although it is endearing to know now we have enough of a regular JRPG party in our ranks that there are people hanging out if I am a little bit late. So sorry to have kept you. I'm Aaron Suduko, the founder of WithTheTerribleFate.com, your online home for all of the most rigorous and involved literary studies of your favorite video games. This is the Tales of Praxis stream, part of the series that I've been running for a few months now for With a Terrible Fate, where we're diving into and analyzing the storytelling of Namco's Tales JRPGs, both on stream through these live JRPG party adventures, another one of which we are embarking on this evening, as well as companion written articles. No, not the reverb. Oh, don't tell me that. Son of a bitch. The reason I was late, and I'm sure that is part of what's going on, is that the other night, my entire desk where I stream fell over, so everything was knocked out of its usual situation. Let me just try unplugging things and plugging back in to see if that helps, Grail. Okay, do we have anything better now? We can do a quick audio test before we go on. I guess I'll vamp while we're seeing if the audio is any better. We just started on the last stream our Tales of Berseria playthrough, following up on the heels of Tales of Zestiria and its DLC. Okay, Pink Moon Echo, it sounds good to you. Maybe I fixed it. Hopefully I improved it a little bit. I should have done more extensive testing before we kicked off, since my entire audio and visual setup fell apart, so apologies for that. I made the mistake, in case it's interesting to people, of opening my windows when I was cooking because I was generating a lot of smoke, and the windows have screens, so I didn't think that it would be a big issue. But apparently there are a bunch of teeny tiny, like smaller than fruit fly bugs in Colorado that made their way through the screens into my apartment. So I had to get all over the walls and ceilings, including climbing on the desk I use for streaming in order to deal with them and kill them all. And I accidentally knocked everything over in the process. Okay, sorry it's knocked the audio quality a little bit. I will do some more involved testing tomorrow, so it hopefully can be better before the subsequent streams, but glad it's not as bad as Zestiria. We had a great time basically enjoying the intro block of Berseria's story last time. I think the only food for thought I had to kick off the stream, just to get us settled in and thinking about the Tales games a little bit, was I'm still not done with my Vesperia playthrough because I'm buried in way more post-game content than I realized there would be. But I will say I finally finished the one of the two EX dungeons, the what do you call it? The Necropolis of Nostalgia, which is a great name. I don't know why that was hard to come to me. It's funny actually, Grail. I know we talked maybe last week or the week before about the EX dungeons in Vesperia, and I mentioned that I had finished one of them and I was working on the other one, but that was because there's a point early on in the Necropolis of Nostalgia where it seems like you finish things, but actually you're only a third of the way through the entire dungeon. So I realized that, and then I spent all of the time between when I said that and now actually finishing it. I have a lot of thoughts I'm still working through on it. Yeah, no wonder you were confused. You should have explained to me, like, oh, Aaron, if you go back, like, just wait. I tweeted about it because I just recently watched The Sopranos for the first time, which is surprise to everyone, great television. Sometimes when everyone says that something's great, it's actually great. But there's this episode where two of the main characters, they get lost in the woods, and it's freezing out. It's wintertime in New Jersey, and they don't know which way to go. And one of them just starts complaining, like, we just walked in a circle. How the fuck did we even do that? And it just felt so on point for exactly what I was feeling during the necropolis of nostalgia. So made a little meme about it. It was definitely hell to get through, but I think it's really interesting. We can talk more about Vesperia as I continue to think about it and wrap up my playthrough. But I think there's an interesting sense in which I almost felt like what they did with the necropolis, and especially with the storyline and the final boss that you encounter at the end of it, it almost felt like in a game where the actual final boss isn't really the enemy or the thing that you're trying to destroy, they actually like relegated the role of the final boss and the thing that could destroy the world to this optional super boss that's really hard to find, and buried in like the center of the earth instead. And I think that's a really, really interesting structure to think about, especially when one considers sort of the broader themes that Vesperia is meditating on and what it has to say about sort of how we chart our courses in life, and what matters and what doesn't. I think the idea that the typical JRPG story is buried in really hard optional content struck me as like surprisingly and refreshingly consistent for the world, despite the fact that actually getting there was a bit of a slug. Yeah, Pink Moon Neko, I'm talking about the definitive edition, which itself has been really interesting because I played it on the 360 years ago, just the original base game. And so part of what's been cool about going back to it was this is my first time playing the definitive edition. And I hadn't realized just the sheer volume of content that they added. And I think they did a much better job than I had expected, given my experience with other kind of definitive edition add-ons that games do, of really making a lot of that supplemental content really add into the story and the world in compelling and interesting ways. It reminded me actually in that dimension a little bit of the Scholar of the First Sin edition of Dark Souls 2, where if you play through the base game of Dark Souls 2, my experience and the experience of a lot of people I've worked with studying it is that like that base game feels incomplete and like the team almost didn't finish saying what it was that they were trying to say. But then you play through the DLC that's added in Scholar of the First Sin, and you get an understanding of what the point of the base game was all along. It's much easier to see, especially with the like the alternate ending that they added. Oh, okay, this is what they were trying to talk about, and this is why all these other things in the game were there in the first place. That's kind of how I feel about a lot of what they added on in the definitive edition of Vesperia. But we can talk more about it as we go. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, Grail. I'll admit this on the stream because we're all friends here. We're part of this real life JRPG party. I fought my way down all the way to the bottom level, and then I encountered this super boss where I don't want to spoil too much of it when we're talking about Vesperia, but we haven't streamed it, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but I don't want to spoil it right now for people who haven't played it. But I encountered the super boss that is level 200, and not just level 200, but has multiple super beefy body parts and the ability to regenerate itself. And I hit that point that I sometimes hit in games, and I hope it's not just me, where I said to myself, look, I've really enjoyed working hard at this game. I feel like this is a battle system that I understand and I'm pretty good at. I also recognize that I would probably have to put in a solid, like at least 5 to 10 more hours to get sufficiently expert at this battle system to take this enemy on at a real difficulty. And at this point, when I've already put like 110 hours into the game, I'm just not willing to do that. And so I did turn down the difficulty level in order to just beat the boss and be done with it, which I'm a little ashamed of, but hey, no shame. We all do what we have to do to get through these games and enjoy them in the way that has the most meaning to us. And I was happy to see the final content. I felt like it was really worth it. Yeah, fair and balanced, right? Like any one of those things, like if the boss had a ton of HP, or if the boss were super leveled, or if there were multiple body parts to the boss, or if it could heal itself, like any one of those things alone would be a nice and interesting challenge. But then to have them all wrapped into one, it was like I looked at my dog Evie and said, we're gonna have to make some adaptations on our end in order to be able to get through this. On the note of Berseria, as we're starting off on this adventure, we just started it and had a lot of thoughts already about the intro, so I don't want to belabor those before we dive back in. One thing I did want to call out, because I was looking at the synopsis just to frankly reorient myself in Berseria after the cleanup I've been doing in Vesperia, and regulars to the stream will know, one of the things that I really think is cool about the Tales games that not a lot of people pay that much attention to, but I think a decent amount of the hardcore Tales community knows that this is a cool thing they do. Not only do they have synopses to help you keep track of events in the games, but oftentimes they'll make pretty interesting literary choices in the synopses. My favorite example being Luke's diary serving as the synopsis in Tales of the Abyss. But so I was reading this one, and it was interesting. I haven't read through all of the entries yet, but one thing that I noticed was when you pick up on the time jump of 3 years when Velvet escapes from the prison in the prison break sequence that we did last time. She's obviously been, I guess the term is Therianized by Artorius as a result of everything that happened at the Advent. And she has literally in the context of this world become a demon. So one of the cool things to note is the way the narration talks about her after that's happened. Look at this. They're referring to her as Velvet, and she's locked up and she's sworn her vengeance against Artorius, but they're also referring to her interchangeably as a beast. This beast in the prison is visited by Ceres, Artorius's former Malik. Ceres's true motives are unknown, but to the beast, Velvet, that doesn't matter. All that matters to her now is to kill Artorius and avenge her brother's death. And that I thought was a really cool way of capturing kind of the duality and tension of this story right off the bat, where it's very clear, and the game already has gone out of its way to show us and now tell us through its language around the synopsis that yes, Velvet is our protagonist. We're focalizing the story through her. It's her plot we're engaging with, but she's also very directly and literally a monster in a way that is different than a lot of your typical JRPG protagonists. So I thought that was interesting. I don't think there's that much else we need to catch up on. We saw poor Velvet try to build a home with Artorius and Laphicet. We saw the kind of unbelievable sacrifice of Laphicet by Artorius, which at least so far seems to be in order to empower the Exorcists to have the strength through this ritual to quell all the demons in the world that came about through this as yet unexplained Daemonblight. Now we know he's holed up in the capital of Logris, basically the new leader of the Exorcist organization that has come to formation in the past 3 years. And Velvet has set off on her one mission and the one thing that has kept her going the last 3 years to get her revenge for the death of Laphicet. She's already got a couple of kind of wayward, kind of fair weather companions who have glommed onto her following the prison break. Magilu, who is a questionable witch who seems to just kind of be along for the ride, and Rogoro, I think his name is, yes, who it seems much more honor-bound and wants to repay what he sees as the debt to Velvet for having liberated him. It was also implied that Ceres was Velvet's sister, who had been reborn as a Malik and sacrificed her life to Velvet in order to give her the strength to press on, and also to fulfill an oath that she passed on the strength to Velvet. That wasn't totally clear to me from the story, but that was captured in the synopsis. And I think that was the majority of it. Oh, we also ran into Oscar, another exorcist, so we're already starting to flesh out our understanding of the Abbey, this new exorcist organization. And we just ran into a suspicious Malik who immediately took an interest in the compass that Velvet had as a symbol and keepsake of Laphicet, and the Malik looks suspiciously like Laphicet. There, we are now up to speed. Let's do it, my friends. Rokuro, not Roguro. Perfect. I knew that didn't sound quite right to me. Good looking out, Grail. Okay, you understand the battle system more or less. Say more, Grail. I want to know what you're talking about when you say that. Is it one of those things the more we know, the less we understand? You're starting to get the inner workings of it, but then the more you see those inner workings, the less sense it actually makes to you.
Oh, the wind, it bites! How can you stand wearing that garb? It doesn't seem humanly possible.
I never said I was human.
Pink Moon Echo, it's a good question. The other thing I'll say, just as a technical note, one other thing I changed in my audio setup was, I know y'all said the balance between my voice and the game audio was good last time, but when I was listening back to it, it felt like I was like a little louder than the game audio than I would have liked. So I turned the game audio up a little bit, but if you can't hear me over it, just let me know and I can change it back. I'm still processing the intro. I like it for all the reasons we were talking about last time, in the sense that I think it subverts a lot of our expectations of what's going to happen from a JRPG pretty quickly, in terms of the chaos and lack of a clear mission, and the protagonist being represented as a somewhere between a villain and an anti-hero. I will say, as I was watching it back and not actively playing it, because I watched some of the VOD, it struck me as much more like self-consciously edgy, I guess I would say, than I was processing at the time. I wish there were a better word for it than that. But yeah, it just felt kind of edgy, where it was very like leaning into, oh yeah, look at how dark this is and look at how aggressively different this is, to the point where, especially as I was playing it and already buying into that, I kind of found myself saying, oh yeah, you don't need to beat me over the head with this. I get it. Especially with some of Velvet's voice acting that we're getting now. So I'm not sure whether that's like something that we'll just get used to, or maybe it'll course correct as we go on. But that was something that was kind of surprising to me as I thought more about it and revisited it after the stream.
Here I come!
It's interesting. So Rokuro and Magilu are traveling with us now, but they haven't deigned to join us in battle yet. It's still just Velvet for the moment.
Really?
Every attack art comes with other effects. Okay, that's similar to Cisteria.
Here I come!
Yeah, that's interesting, Grail. That was actually something that I found, especially with the harder enemies and super bosses in Berseria, that I didn't remember, and it's definitely something that I find annoying in games where the difficulty just comes from enemies either stagger locking or stun locking you, and then it just doesn't feel fun, like, unless you're just equipping stuff that, you know, makes you straight up immune to stun. It feels kind of unplayable to me, or like I'm doing something wrong in a way that's not super satisfying.
Come on, really?
That's weird. My left stick just decided to stop working for a second there. I hope my PS5 controller isn't already starting to fail me.
Here I come!
I'm a little anxious about it though. I got like the launch edition of the PS5, so I don't know how reliable all the different components of it are. But I did also notice just within the last few weeks, the controller's battery life also seems to be sort of starting to decline precipitously. Or I feel like it used to last like half a day, now it only lasts maybe 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours. I don't know, I'm kind of suspicious about that. Forgot we gained the special power to Therianize, which is a huge part of combat. So we should probably use it. Yeah, for sure. That's a pretty aggressive one, too, to not only be stunned, but also lose a soul. Just total loss of mobility and options.
So nice to be free again. able to move these bones around like I want.
So, Rokuro, what got you all chained up in that mold hole?
Ties to home. It's complicated.
Oh! Then are you really sure you ought to be taking on further debts?
It's a teaching of House Rangetsu. Pay what you owe.
Well, what a civilized family you've got.
Were you in for long?
3 years, maybe. That's why I know so little about the state of the world.
Oh gosh, me too! Art-wielding Malakim! I've never seen such a thing! How much else have I missed? Used to be witches who had a monopoly on charms and hexes. Can you even comprehend what this'll do to business?
Should I even ask why you were imprisoned?
Bagged for unlicensed witchcraft. It was a tale of betrayal most wicked and foul!
Yeah, I feel like I remember the flow of these battles as a bit more fluid and manageable than Zesteria's battles as well, Grail.
No, thank you.
So it's good to hear you say that. Although it does seem like a problem where, as you say, if only certain attacks have certain effects on you and there's no way to kind of figure out why that's the case, that strikes me as an issue with the system. Because you want to be able to learn those things, especially if you invest in the combat mechanics of the game quite a bit, right? My guess would be it's a certain attack type or maybe element that begets stun, but my guess is if it were something that simple, you probably already would have figured it out. Pink Moon Echo, since you asked what I thought of the intro, I'm curious, what are your thoughts after we played through the first 3 hours together? What are your first impressions as we're diving into this?
Come on, really?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever really found myself saying, man, I can't stand this Tales game's music. I think I can pretty much count on every single one of them I've played to have a soundtrack that I can really get into for the most part. That's true, Grail. They can't inflict status effects on you if they can't hit you. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I do feel like even with the setup of the souls and like what it was just teaching us in terms of the dynamism of how much SG you have based on how many souls you have, that strikes me as the kind of thing that could make it much more fluid than the similar but I guess a little more prototypical system in Zestiria. The same way you could kind of think of like Symphonia as building blocks for what then Tales of the Abyss took to another level, and Tales of Vesperia even.
I'm in so much trouble. Won't somebody please help a kitty out? Meow.
Oh, look, another weirdo.
That thing talks? What if it's a cat demon?
Simmer down, big man. She's just a cat. Haven't seen one in a good long while.
Cats? Is that different from a regular cat?
Yeah, well, Grail, you were already ragging on the music in the prison, right? You really didn't like the, what did you call it, 4 notes on repeat?
Sort of.
That works for me. I understand that they're hard to understand, at least.
No one knows what cats are. That is the central mystery of the entire Tales universe.
Cat spirits on you. They look like this.
That's just like what I found at Titania.
Perfect. You could say they're kinda like our souls to us.
Cat spirits, huh?
Sometimes we call them kitten caboodles, too.
That's just foolish.
Really?
Don't call them that.
How about kitty clumps?
Shut up.
Anyway, one night we were having a feast so meowvelous, our souls flew right out of our bodies. That's why I need your help to find the cat spirits and use them to emeowsipate my friends.
Emeowsipate? Really?
It means to use cat spirits to free cats who are locked away in cats' boxes like these here. Meow. Here you'd say apesipate. This this one would be Edoxipate. And finally...
It's a grungy throwback, Grail. I'll fight you on that.
Yeah.
I get it's not one of the best tracks in the series or anything by a mile, but I appreciate the vibe they're going for with it.
Wow, you're way more clever than you look. For real. I guess I totally underestimated you. Please, our cat spirits got scattered far and wide, and so many sad cats are trapped without them.
Seek out the cat spirits and rescue our poor lost brothers and sisters, meow.
And why should I?
Please, think of the cats.
No, cats have weird and mysterious powers. There's a good chance we might benefit by having them in our debt. We'll make it worth your while.
I'll amass all the cats in the world, and then use them to kill Artorius.
Curse on us.
That has been known to happen.
If we're doing all this traveling anyway, why not help them on the side?
Just remember that it's on the side.
I do think, I mean, it's a silly thing, but I would put a flag in the ground and say that one of the things that the Tales series does in a really cool and fun way is making meaning out of these weird little cute animal species that are such a trope in JRPGs. But if you think about the cats and the turtles and even like the Cheagles, I think about in Tales of the Abyss, like they're all kind of just metaphysically different in ways that tend to have a special meaning in the world. Like it's not just pure silliness or breaking the fourth wall or stuff that doesn't belong. Like even in Symphonia, you have the whole unsuspectingly touching cat's side quest where Genus gets his unique outfit, and so much of it is about sort of persecution and being seen and finding your own sense of community. Everything that's very Tales of Symphonia and Genus. In Cheagles, you know, in Tales of the Abyss, you get something that could easily be a cute little sideshow monster elevated to the level of like the holy species that has a special meaning to Yulia and the church and everything. And even in Zestiria, right, we have Cat's Corner, this little weird kind of pocket universe that you get spirited away to for a special kind of confrontation with the Dark Turtles. So I don't know how controversial this is, but when I think about those elements of Tales storytelling versus something like, I guess the most obviously similar case, the Mughals in Final Fantasy, I feel like Tales does do a special job and a better than average job at weaving them into the theming of what the games are trying to say and how they say it.
Exorcists.
Well, that's just inconsiderate. Word of the prison break couldn't have traveled so quickly.
I somehow doubt they'll just let us in looking the way we do.
I apologize about earlier. I didn't mean to steal this.
The compass.
You okay with this? He could be working for the Exorcists.
I'm following him,
Is he your dessert?
if necessary.
He must have gone this way.
Yeah, this is cool to see, Grail. I know you talked about this at the end of the Zestiria stream, because one of the last few conversations that Saray and Mikleo have is when they're talking about just the whole range of different places there are to see in the world and how they didn't even see that many of them on their journey. And one of the specific regions that they call out is an icy continent or region. So it is neat that right after we wrapped up Zestiria and heard them talking about that, here we actually are in an icy region of the same world. Well, it's like, it's some kind of corset, right? Oh, we can't look at her outfit yet anyway. That's definitely an unusual style choice. Like a lot of styles in this game, you might say. Velvet's included. Maybe even especially Velvet.
That smell. Flamestone.
Flamestone?
Also known as Malkionite, a rare mineral only found in Northgand. Mix it with sulfur and you get explosives. Mix it with oil and you get fuel.
Sounds dangerous.
Yeah, court gesture.
If it's true.
Kefka, how did you find your way into my Tales game?
Oh,
Looks like the boy got away.
Well, we're in the city now.
Well, then let's scout for the Maritime Guild. Whoever's in charge of all these storehouses must have their hands in the shipping trade and shipbuilding.
And we could use a true sailor, if we can find one.
now that's a plan I endorse. We dodged the sea's murderous grasp this time, but who's to say our luck will hold?
We should look for some weapons, too, if I'm to be any use in a fight.
You're still wearing one.
Nope, not an option.
The most Kefka adjacent, at least. I do feel like the Jester character is fairly underutilized in a lot of JRPGs. I guess, oh, what's his name? It's a pun. There's the Bard character in Tales of Destiny, who's, I'm not going to remember his name right now, but, Aquavale, I think, is the name of his kingdom. He's one of the princes. So not quite a Jester, but given his ties to the court and his musical proclivities, he kind of feels like he's playing in the same area to me. No pun intended, I guess. Oh, got it. I'll have to look it up after this. He's one of the characters you meet and then have the option to reintroduce to your party, and I failed to do that on my playthrough, which is why I'm grasping at his name. It's not as fresh in my head as someone like Ruti or Mary or Leon. Carol! Yes, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, well, because the big warrior you meet at the Colosseum is named something ridiculous in the Japanese version, right? Like, not King Kongman, but something basically that. I feel like that's something Namco and a lot of JRPGs kind of outgrew over the last few years. It was a 97 game,
Exorcists
remember?
are warriors who protect the whole world from demons. You can't just protect your parents. You've got to protect everyone.
Oh, that sounds really hard.
It is. And it's precisely because the Exorcists are working so hard that we look up to them.
Yeah, exorcists are the best.
They're treated like heroes, I suppose, to normal people.
Kongman. Oh, there you go. I was right. That's what I remembered in my head, but something was telling me, no, that can't be right. That's too ridiculous. Nope, that's exactly what it is. Kang Kongman, maybe, instead of King Kongman. Because he has a first name, too, I think. Yeah, they were still finding their stride, especially with localization. Yeah, I don't know if it's just because I was talking about it and I kind of broke the seal on it on accident, but even with some of these like NPC conversations, I'm finding that I'm not loving the voice acting of a lot of these characters in the way that I typically do for a Tales game. So I'm hoping that's something that does not stay consistent across this whole game. I don't even know the right way to put my finger on what it sounds like to me. Almost like a lot of the roles are just kind of overacted, if that makes any sense. Or maybe we just have to spend more time in the world. Those things have a tendency to get more natural as one spends more hours in a JRPG. Yeah, I really don't know what it is, Grail, because I don't remember being annoyed by the voice acting in this game, and I didn't feel that way during the last stream, but I definitely noticed it when I was watching the VOD, and now it's like I can't get it out of my head. Yeah, that's true. I suppose one explanation that you could offer, although it wouldn't really help the villagers, but with our party so far, you could say, well, especially with demons, or even with the non-demon party members, they're all very distinctive and kind of inhuman or human-adjacent personalities, and so it makes sense if they sound a little bit off-kilter relative to what we expect a human to sound like. I really like Artorius' voice actor, Ray, what's his name? I know you said last time, Grail, but I've already forgotten it, so...
There's a group of sailors.
I know at least some of these
Is
voice
that the
actors are
Oh,
heavy
Harry,
hitters that I
weapon
really
shop
like.
looks promising. Good luck with the shipwright search.
Boys. Poor creatures just can't be separated from their favorite toys, can they?
I like Magula's VA a lot, too.
It's true.
Oh, she was thinking about Laphicet.
Is this a shipping guild?
Damn that dial! What does he think he's doing by trying to resist? We wouldn't be in this mess if he were dead.
Excuse me. I need a ship repaired.
Sorry, but we can't help.
What makes you say that?
Guild business is currently suspended.
Yeah, agreed, Grail. His work in Tales of Arise,
The order of Exorcist
chef's
Teresa
kiss,
of the
in my
Abbey.
view. Love it.
Lady Teresa.
Number 2, did I give you permission to speak?
Now, this track I love. This is a very cool music track.
Lady Teresa, how long must this punishment of ours last? You know it was all Dial's fault, don't you, my lady?
I know Dial was the one smuggling Flamestone, but your guild, through its negligence, shares responsibility. This rule was set down by the Abbey to maintain order. Do you disagree with it?
No, my lady.
We will capture, interrogate, and sentence Dial. When this has been accomplished, you will be free to continue business.
Oh, and the Tales game is so consistently great for that, Grail. Just with characters in general. I think villains pretty much always get leitmotifs when they're sufficiently central to the story.
girl,
The main characters in
you
the party,
cold dressed like
everyone
that?
in between. That is a good question, Lady
Just
Teresa.
arrived from the south. I wasn't aware Northgand was so cold.
Hatch! A young woman ought to keep herself warm.
Thank you for your concern.
At least they talk about her outfit. It's not as if everyone is pretending she's normally dressed.
My. So this is how the Abbey flexes its muscle, hmm? Cruel, cruel world these days.
I see how things stand. If I catch this Dial person, you can repair my ship, right?
Sure, but I warn you, he's a demon. He escaped after killing a bunch of soldiers who tried to capture him. Can't be done without an exorcist.
He's from a small village outside the city. If you're doing this, I'd imagine that's a good place to start searching. He's a brute with the head of a lizard. I'd prepare for bloodshed.
I'm in.
Anything could happen. It's best to keep our options open.
While you wait, find us a good navigator.
Yeah, properly
I wonder
shredded
what
up
Darren Roberts got
garbage.
up to in the meantime.
No,
Let's
it's
check
not
in
an
on him
outfit.
at the weapon shop.
Weapon shop. This is fun. I had already totally forgotten that guilds are a pretty significant part of this game, so it's really fun for me to be playing it, just picking up on the end of Berseria, which is also all about guilds. Cool setup also. Like, it's always fun to see the different ways that stories set up situations so that the characters have to learn about the world in the same way that you, the player, are learning about the world. So the idea that these three party members were prisoners who basically missed the last 3 years when the world was radically changing because of all of Artorius' efforts following the Advent. It's a really natural and cool situation where they're discovering the way things stand now between the Abbey and the guilds and all of the demons who are populating the world in the same way that we are. No, I'm with you. It's cool for setting the tone too, because I feel like so oftentimes when you're exploring a town in a JRPG, like if we were in Tales of Symphonia or something, you would expect most of the town music to be kind of whimsical and laid back for the most part, especially in the early motions of the game's story. And there's a very notable sense of just almost like a march to this music with the drum beat and the strings just gives it a certain amount of suspense and gravity. It's another way of kind of showing the players this is a very different kind of story than what you're used to or how you expect JRPG arcs to typically build.
Found a real good one. The blade was badly rusted, but once I polished it up, it turned out to have a fine edge.
I can scarcely believe something of that quality was languishing in my bargain bin. You've taught me quite a lesson. The weapon is yours as payment.
My thanks.
So you'll help us out?
Of course. How did your errand fare? I see. So we're hunting a reptilian demon called Dial, are we?
We'll check out his hometown first.
Have fun, you kids!
You aren't coming along?
I'm afraid I've got bigger fish to fry at the moment. That little matter of tracking down my betrayer. Besides, if I stick around, I'm not so sure I wouldn't wind up as someone's midnight snack.
My pellet has standards. High standards.
Sick
All the
burn.
more reason to skedaddle!
And somehow Rokuro is the one called out as being outlandishly dressed. His outfit seems the most reasonable to me by a country mile. Okay, this equipment system is looking a little more intuitive to me than Sisteria's at first glance, at least. So hopefully that bodes well for actually taking advantage of some more of the equipment throughout the course of the game. We really did not in Sisteria. I guess. Alright, let's try that. Oh, we can move faster on the map now. Sick! Yeah, the skill board definitely broke my brain more than I was hoping it would, so I'm happy to be without that. Seems good. Oh, yes, and it's different in that it shows you the different titles that you can unlock and what you need to do to unlock them before you actually have them. That's kind of cool, I think, especially if you're trying to build out your title library and can sort of set mini goals to get all of them done. Yeah, this seems like a much more livable setup than Zestiria, at least according to my tastes. Alright, let's go with that.
Look, a yak. Hey, Velvet, here's a fun fact. Yak tail hair is considered to be among the highest quality materials for a helmet's plume.
Wow, really? Also, I don't care.
At my house, we had this
Harsh.
helmet. It was an incredible piece, covered with yak tail hair. The talk of the town. House Rangetsu has two treasures going for it, people would say. The Helm of Yak and Stormhowl.
They must not have thought very highly of the rest of you.
Why do you say that? Although, I guess I can think of a reason or two. Oh well, it's nothing a demon like me has to worry about.
Like, where's Rokuro? Yeah, I get that it's a Japanese style, but I don't. It also just strikes me as a very standard swordsman type outfit. Maybe that's just because I have the model of the samurai in my head, and I guess if there aren't any samurai or samurai types in this world, maybe that's why his outfit strikes people as unusual. I guess also given that we're in the middle of winter world, most people are wearing parkas as opposed to some sort of lighter garb.
Did you hear? That navigator for the shipping guild, Dial. He turned into a demon. He supposedly killed and ate his crewmates, then ran off.
Daemonblight? In Hellawes? What do we do?
No need to worry. Lady Teresa is already dealing with it. She'll hunt down that Dial character in no time.
They say that once you change, you can never turn back into a human. Is killing him our only option?
Killing him would be a mercy. Demons are just monsters who've lost their humanity.
Yeah, you're right. Things like that aren't human anymore.
Not human, huh?
I think Evie takes offense to the not human comment based on how that got her in a barking jag in the background here. The other thing that makes more of a difference than I would expect just in the way we're navigating the world so far is for a lot of these little voiced conversations, I'm not pressing any buttons to advance it. It just automatically advances, which makes it feel much more like we're stumbling on a conversation as opposed to in most JRPGs and the Tales games prior to this where you have to actually press X or whatever button in order to keep the dialogue moving forward. I think we have to... Oh, I see. She's up here.
Let me get this straight, Alpha Area. You want to form an alliance with my Gamma Area to bring down the Betas?
Correct. It's the classic strategy. Ally with a distant state and strike a neighboring one.
What is this? A council of war?
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Is that it? Indeed. If your Alpha forces and my Gamma forces work together, Beta Area is done for. Heh, I like it. You've got yourself an alliance, Alpha Area.
Excellent. We shall be victorious in this year's Hellawes Grand Snowball Fight. Let us toast to our victory.
This isn't a snowball fight. It's a snowball war.
Fools! I was the one who engineered their alliance. Once they eliminate Beta Area, the Alpha and Gamma forces will launch a full-scale assault to destroy the other. Exhausted, the victor won't be prepared when my Delta army sweeps down upon them. They have sealed their own doom.
These kids really fight dirty.
All's fair in snow and war.
I think we stumbled upon a mini JRPG inside of a JRPG with all of this intrigue about the snowball fight. I don't know, Grail. I found myself really liking the silent background conversation system in Zysteria. I'm sure I said it at the time, but it made me feel just like there was more happening in each town, and there was a lot of life to it, even beyond the little interactions that we were directly engaging with. Like, don't get me wrong, I like being able to eavesdrop on the little vignettes like we're doing now, and I think that definitely contributes more to the story, but I feel like if we were able to do both, that might be nice, because like the background silent voices just add a layer of texture to the experience of these towns. I feel that what we're getting now doesn't quite replicate.
Ooh, this cold is beyond ordinary. Well, Halavis is a northern country, but still, it wasn't this cold when I was a kid. The cold, snow, and ice were never this bad. I know it for a fact. It's that... what do they call it again?
Global cooling?
Yeah, that's the one. The Abbey says the world's getting colder.
You can just say climate change. That works in both directions.
Worse, I have to shovel snow and chop firewood all day. Who's responsible for this global cooling? Let me at him.
Well, don't look at me. It's not my fault.
That's fair, Grail. Yes, the 100% of the focus has to be on the theme. Oh, also, I should differentiate between two kinds of background chatter, because I think what you were talking about were the actual, like, voiced background voices. I did find that kind of hard to get into, especially once you started hearing the loop of it, where you would hear the same bits of background chatter. That was kind of harder for me to appreciate. I was talking more about the little, like, unvoiced cards of background conversation that would cut in as just text that you could read, which would not interrupt things like this sick theme. Yeah, that kind of voiced background chatter, I'm very okay with not having. I felt like that kind of counted against the game more than in its favor. I think are we supposed to go out the other way? Yeah, this might be the wrong direction, but since we're here already. It looks like we do have something over here now. It's pretty cool, no pun intended, that even as a kind of one-off joke, a JRPG like this would talk about climate change pretty directly. I feel like even though, of course, like the environment and ecological mindfulness is a theme that you get in a lot of JRPGs and video games, you don't get stuff that is that sort of overtly politically charged or touches climate change as such in a lot of games, at least not in the ones that I play.
What a beautiful ship.
Isn't she? She transports flamestone and sulfur to the capital in Midgand. Have you heard of flamestone? It's this new explosive material the Abbey developed. Thanks to their discovery, we can make some really powerful new cannons and explosives.
Explosives. Sounds dangerous.
It is dangerous, but it's also necessary. Not only are there demons about, but we've humans to contend with too, with pirates and bandits in ever-increasing numbers. On the bright side, with a higher demand for flamestone, Halavis is prospering like never before. Flamestone is the only reason our little snowbound city is thriving. A keelhaul to anyone who says otherwise.
So this ship goes to the capital. If I asked, could you take us with you?
Nope, not happening. The guild ordered a total suspension of activity. We can't lift anchor. Besides, any ship carrying precious ores has an exorcist on board for security. You need the Abbey's permission.
Sounds like they keep a tight lid on things.
Yeah, I guess. But the Abbey makes the rules, so what are you gonna do? Without the Abbey, humanity would be dead in the water. A keelhaul to anyone that says otherwise.
This is interesting. I can't help but compare the way that Berseria is already playing with guilds in the Abbey versus the way that Vesperia thinks about guilds and the Empire in that game. And it's cool because already I feel as though it's showing pretty interestingly different portraits of those kinds of relationships. Where in something like Vesperia, you get an interesting portrait of kind of what it would look like if there were one empire that kind of had this large global presence, but also this rich diversity of guilds that existed somewhat harmoniously, but at least on the same footing as the empire. Whereas here, even though the Abbey has only been around for 3 years, potentially just because of the scale of the crisis of Daemonblight and the fact that the Exorcists are the only ones capable of dealing with demons, they clearly already are quickly establishing this kind of authoritarian, like, iron fist where they're able to totally stifle the operations and activity of the guilds just by fiat, basically. Which is a very different kind of relationship than one you see in Vesperia. Great minds, Grail. Great minds think alike. That would almost be interesting, too. Thinking about potential topics for comparative study, because if you could look at a few of these different games in terms of different portraits in the development of like political systems and social groups, because you have something like the sort of symbiotic or balanced relationship in Vesperia and kind of the approach of totalitarianism that you get in something like Berseria, and then moving on to Arise, you have sort of the extreme of like 4 or 5, I think 5, right? But like very different portraits of like different kinds of authoritarian regimes that exist in isolation relative to one another, as opposed to the more unitarian one that you get in Berseria. Oh, how's the balance also between my voice and the game? Is it better as I had hoped? Excellent, thank you, Grail. Pink Moon Echo, you are a relative newcomer to the stream, so you might not have heard this story of mine. The reason that I'm so obsessively saving whenever I come across a save circle is we started the whole Tales of Praxis adventure with Tales of Symphonia Remastered, and we encountered what I have since learned is a kind of shockingly common glitch in playthroughs of the game, where when you're traveling through the Ymir forest and you get to the part where you are like flying back and forth in between different screens by eagle, there's a glitch in one part of the forest where you will oftentimes just fly off the screen and then the game never comes back and you have to do a hard reset of it. And so I lost some progress there, which gave me a lot of save state anxiety. So basically ever since then in these games, when I've been streaming, when I run across a save circle, I make a point to obsessively save at it to avoid that fate. Yeah, Grail, I don't die for the same reasons that you die, because I'm not a glutton for punishment, but all kinds of reasons to want to preserve your progress. I guess this is... Oh, there we go.
There's something growing all the way out here. That is one gutsy
Oh,
flower.
I see the flowers on the ground.
Princessia.
That's quite an elegant name.
My sister loved them.
Oh, we got a flashback.
I see. Thank you. And everybody's in position, I take it?
Yes. Preparations are underway now. We're all looking forward to it.
Not much longer. Keep up the good work.
Of course.
If anyone can succeed, it's you, sir.
The time is nigh, Celica. Time to do what needs to be done. For you, for him, for everyone. Is something the matter, Velvet?
Oh, no, I just didn't want to disturb you.
Perish the thought. You're not disturbing anyone. She's your sister, too.
I know, I just figured that, well, she loved you the most out of all of us. And that, you also loved her more than anyone else, so...
Velvet, there's no ranking among family. Celica, Laphicet, you. You're all very important to me.
Yeah, pretty drastically, right?
Yeah, you're right.
I think that's part of why I'm having trouble adjusting to it in the present time of the
almost
narrative,
the anniversary
honestly.
of her death. I better go to the Cape and pick her up, Princessia.
That's a good idea. I'm sure that would make her happy.
Yes.
It's what happens when you keep yourself alive by sheer force of will to carry out revenge for 3 years, right?
That snake Artorius.
They say flowers have different meanings and stuff, right? Any idea what Princessias signify?
Betrayal.
Oh?
I know I very recently talked about this on the stream, so I won't belabor the point, but that's a really nice and well-contained example of something that I love the Tale series for, and as we play more of them, I'm realizing is quite consistent across a lot of the games, namely the way in which characters make meaning out of their worlds and their journeys through the world with others by thinking very self-consciously about the symbolism of the various objects they encounter in order to tell certain stories about kind of the meaning of the world or the events they've been through. So the idea that whereas previously the Princessias might have symbolized something else like love or family or reunion, now Velvet has turned them into a symbol of betrayal because of what the way she's reinterpreting memories like that now that she knows Arthur as Artorius. It's a really nice way of capturing not just how symbolism can inform the way you think about the world, but also how you can kind of change or update your symbology over the course of events in your life in order to reflect the changes that you're going through as a person.
You won't get any pity or compassion from me.
I see a village.
Let's go ask around.
Nothing but ice and snow as far as the eye can see.
Are you cold?
I'm fine, but I'm not the one with the exposed midriff.
Doesn't bother me either. And watch where you let your eyes wander.
Hey there, sorry. I meant no offense. So you still retain...
What part of her is safe to look at in that outfit,
You
though?
don't?
Me? I've lost a lot of my human feelings. I figured that was just part of turning into a demon.
I didn't know that.
But deep down, I'm still the same person I always was. And I can still enjoy a good drink. I'm glad I haven't lost that, at least.
If you say so.
Thank goodness I was here. But any further attacks and...
An exorcist. Was that Dial she slew?
I think we don't want to pause key early game introductions too much, but I think that's one of the elements of the story and the storytelling that will be interesting to keep an eye on and think about as we go on further in the game, because you could definitely think of the outfit as something like fan service, but also I think they're, even in the lens of like the symbolism that we were just talking about and the way that the characters apply symbolism, I think there is something that's kind of telling and reflective of Velvet's character, and the fact that like these are very directly like discarded prisoner's garb, and the way that she wears them even after she's out in the world on her adventure, I feel like is an interesting like symbol for the way in which she's keeping herself going through the identity that she found in that prison, and how she's kind of very directly imprisoned herself within her revenge quest to settle things with Artorius. Because remember, that's another thing that is a consistent theme across the Tales games. Not only is there a focus on outfits as aesthetics and a way to customize the characters, but also a lot of those outfits oftentimes are born out of special meaning of roles that the characters can take on, right? So as kind of unnerving as outfits like Velvet's might look at first glance, I think even that, when we think about sort of the psychology of Velvet and how she's come into herself as not a person, but rather a Therian and a demon over the last 3 years, I think, you know, if you want to see it as a kind of symbolism for her character, I think that explanation is available to you.
No, it wasn't a lizard demon. Are you crying?
It's just everything that's going on.
Yeah, that is a fair point, Grail. If you're going to wear that, it's you kind of lose the standing to call people out about
Abbey
it.
has explicitly chosen not to come to their aid. It's true we haven't the forces to be everywhere at once, and the people of the Outlands refuse to obey the Abbey's rules. It's a heartless decision, I know, but it follows from the Abbey's perfect logic and principle.
Why make excuses to me?
I'm not making... My name is Eleanor Hume. I am a praetor patrolling for the Abbey. What is your business here?
We heard there was a murderous demon in this town who fled from Helives.
The Shipping Guild incident, yes. I've been looking into it, but I haven't found any clues yet. Worry not. We will track down that foul demon and put it to the sword.
Did the Exorcist lady go away?
Yeah, she's gone.
Oh, good. I didn't want us to get eaten.
Eaten?
I mean, I don't know anything about a demon.
She said convincingly.
Tell me. I'll keep it a secret, I promise.
There's a lizard demon in a cave to the north. He said he'd eat the whole village up if I told anyone. I'll give you these. Don't tell anybody else.
Yeah, it is a little like she's seeing into her own past, isn't it, Pink Moon Neko?
Got it. That's a promise.
A cave to the north.
Gotta say, the folks here really don't trust the Exorcists, do they? This is actually rather good. What's wrong? A worm?
Nothing. Can't taste a thing.
Am I remembering it right? Was there... I'm already losing track of the beginning of this game, because there was a significant fruit-eating scene in the intro, right? Did she eat apples with Laphicet when they went home together or something like that? There's definitely a meaning there. Besides the fact that she's just lost her taste. Her literal sense of taste, I mean.
We learned what we need to. Let's look for that cave.
Beardsley! What a name for a town. I also, so I don't know how much overlap there is between people watching this stream and fans of, not anime, but I guess anime-adjacent adult animation. I mean, I guess there's a decent amount of overlap, because in my time since first playing Berseria, I fell in love with the Netflix show Agretzko, and I've seen it a million times. And the main character of that, Retzko, is voiced by the same really great VA, speaking of great voice actors, who voices Eleanor. And so now, like, as soon as Eleanor was just introduced, and I'm sure throughout this whole game, like, I can't hear it as anyone other than Retzko from a Gretzko, just playing the role of an exorcist in this world. Yeah, he's very mild-mannered and honor-bound, isn't he, Grail? Especially for a demon, I feel like that's an interesting trope to be playing with. Makes his character hard to pin down in a really satisfying way.
That's one fine yak you've got there. What an adorable face.
You might not want to lean in too close.
Hmm? Why? That is nasty.
That's why.
Yaks ruminate the food they eat while they digest it. Their burps are one of the foulest things you'll ever smell.
Same as cows and goats. Everyone who's raised livestock knows that.
I think that point's been driven home. That's a smell I never want to ruminate on myself.
Hey, Pink 420 Lightning Gaming. Welcome to the stream. Just working through and reading and talking the storytelling of Tales of Berseria. Pleasure to have you here. We're just getting started, so it's a fine time to be dropping in.
This village seems much more run down than Helavi's was.
Thank you, Pink Moon Echo. I'm getting a little better at that, but I don't know why it's such a learning curve for me in this game.
And I take it the Abbey doesn't care what happens to this place.
So, disrupt their precious order, and you get banished?
Exactly. I'm sure they'd say it's all part of their notion of reason.
Oh yeah, that exorcist Eleanor said something like that.
After the Advent, the Exorcists showed up to quell the tide of demons and to restore the human world. But Daemonblight keeps spreading, and the only places they can keep safe are a few of the bigger cities. There aren't enough exorcists to protect everyone.
When the going's tough, cut off any excess baggage. It's the rational thing to do.
I suppose so, but it's too heartless. And that right there, that's the Abbey for you. Humans aren't livestock, and we're not machines either. That's why some of us here, myself included, chose to live here of our own accord.
Guess there are all types of humans out there.
The important takeaway here is that exorcists are neither invincible nor infallible.
It's interesting, too, because like we were talking about in the last stream, the game does somewhat so more than other Tales games beat you over the head with some of its central themes, where in basically every conversation so far we've seen people talking about the difference between emotion and reason, which constitutes one of, if not the core theme of the game. But then I feel like even in a game where it's oftentimes so explicit about it, there are quiet moments where those themes are present, but they're not explicitly talked about. And I feel like for me, that's where the themes really sing a little bit more. Like, think back to that flashback we saw of Arthur, now Artorius, visiting Velvet's sister's grave, Celica, her name is, right? Back in their town. And I was really struck by what he said when he basically invited Velvet to the grave, where Velvet said, yeah, you know, I thought you might want a personal moment with her because she loved you more than anyone else, and I know you felt that way about her, and I think that's important. And Arthur said, well, you know, there's no difference in standing between family relationships. Like, you don't, like, you're on the same level as me. There's no difference in how I felt about her versus how you did. Which on the surface of it, like, you could imagine at the time how Velvet might have thought, and if we had just been looking at that in the first place, not knowing how Artorius would be killing Laphicet and betraying Velvet, that might seem like a very kind of inviting and positive sentiment, and like he's just trying to invite Velvet to be able to mourn her sister. But now thinking about it in the context of what's already happened in the game, with this difference between emotion and reason and the kind of obsession that the Abbey and Artorius has with logic, you can see that echoed in what he was saying at the grave, where there is something kind of like coldly unemotional and almost like lacking emotional intelligence about the idea that there's not a special quality to the relationship that particular people have with one another. Because of course there's going to be a difference between the relationship between a man and his deceased wife and a girl and her deceased sister, and to be kind of aspect blind to that, as someone like Wittgenstein would call it, is to be missing out on a whole dimension of the world, the emotional content of it that is so obvious to someone like Velvet, but totally obtuse to someone like Artorius.
Wait. My granddaughter said she spoke with you.
Hey, hold up. It's not like we threatened her or anything.
Don't worry, I know. I gather you intend to continue your travels, yes? Then take this. It's nothing fancy, but hopefully it helps.
Cooking. We made it, what, almost 4.5 hours in a Tales game before being introduced to the cooking system? That might be a new record. Oh, we have auto cooking back. That's nice. I'd forgotten about that.
Food's ready. It's nothing special.
It is a nice quality of life addition for me to be able to see the progress towards development of cooking ability in this, because that was actually one of the things that was a minor gripe for me in Vesperia, because regulars to the stream will know that cooking is not a JRPG system I naturally gravitate towards or spend a lot of time with. But then there are certain moments, like a certain quest in Tales of Vesperia, where, oh, surprise, surprise, suddenly you have to invest in the cooking system if you want to get further in this quest or this storyline. And so then I end up investing in it. And Vesperia, in contrast to this, was very opaque in terms of how far away you were from benchmarks in the growth of cooking ability or the development of new recipes and stuff like that. Grail, we talked about this on the last stream, though. You're not supposed to block things. You're supposed to dodge. No, Grail. I would like cooking 1,000 times less if there were a minigame involved. Do you know me?
Ah, now that hit the spot.
Here's my thing, right? I don't intrinsically resent something like a cooking system, because I think, especially when you're going on a world journey, and especially if it's a game like Tales of Arise with a whole, camping mechanic and spending time in the outdoors, of course, cooking really naturally folds in with that. It can be a great way to express the different characteristics of different people in the party. And I love cooking in the real world. I think it's an interesting skill and art form and just way to engage with your world. I think that's all great. The thing that is, I think, weird for me and gives me trouble buying into it is it's just one of those systems. I feel the same way about fishing systems in a lot of JRPGs, where it's a norm of the medium that there has to be a cooking system in a JRPG, and there has to be a fishing game that's going to be much more central to the story than you would expect. Like, you think about it almost in the same way, or I think about it in the same way as, like, in certain eras of, like, painting and visual arts throughout history, there were certain, like, subject matters that people who are coming up in, like, art academies and stuff just had to paint or sculpt because it was a certain, like, demonstration of their facility with the art form. The way Renaissance painters, for instance, focused a lot on the musculature of the human body and the folds of cloth, just to demonstrate the way that they could use paints to play with light and shadow and make it seem realistic and showcase all of their skills. I feel like almost some sort of similar standard setting happens with a lot of game development, where even if there's no kind of intrinsically compelling reason for a particular mini game or system to exist within a story, it's just something that is expected for the developers to like have their own take on or present within the game. Water dungeons oftentimes, or just water levels in certain kinds of games. Not so much JRPGs, but a lot of other genres of video game, I feel like, are the same way. And so because it's so expected and standard, I feel like oftentimes my experience of those systems ends up being that they're, I don't want to say non sequiturs, but relatively less justified than a lot of the other more game specific mini games or systems that might be introduced.
Hey, Velvet, can I ask you a question?
You can do whatever you want, but just because you ask doesn't mean you're getting an answer.
So, about that whole apple thing, you can't taste anything?
Not entirely. I can taste blood.
Nothing else?
Nothing. And I don't think I can feel full either.
You don't think? You talk like you've never had a good meal before.
I haven't. Not normal food, at least. Not since I became a demon.
So, what have you been
Velvet
eating?
is literally a metaphor for unsatisfied vengeance.
I'm sorry.
Forget it. This is just what I am now. As long as I have a recipe, I can still cook. And now I don't even have to worry
The
about
only
how it
satisfying meal she could ever have now is the blood of
tastes. Food keeps my
Artorius.
strength up. That's all I care about.
I guess I'll be generous to this game in light of what I was just saying, because I think even with the understanding that there's always going to be a cooking system, it is an interesting spin and kind of subversion of that system to introduce it into a context and party where the main character can't taste anything. So she recognizes that, just as we see in the game, it's something that is kind of a fact of life and has to be there, but she doesn't get any value out of it. That's kind of a fun, almost meta-fictional way of giving a special meaning to a cooking system in a way that you wouldn't get in a lot of other games. So props to it for that.
Oh yeah, the
Thank
guy
you,
at that
Pink
weapon
Moon
shop gave me some booze for the trip. I nearly forgot about it.
You really think it's a good idea to drink when we've got demons to fight?
A little drink will warm me up.
I thought you couldn't feel the cold.
That's true, I suppose. Well, I'm not drinking it anyway. I'm using it for something.
Like what? Got some wounds to clean?
That's one use for it, sure. But I've got something more practical in mind. By pouring it on the pegs that hold the blade and hilt together, the wood will swell and hold everything firmly in place in battle.
You've got such a one-track mind, I swear.
That's just the kind of demon I am.
Alright, onward, I think. We didn't rest at the inn, and the party is full on health, but I'm kind of interested to see whether we get a lot of inn skits in the way that Tales of Zestiria had a skit pretty much every time we rested at an inn. I'm also just going to take a second and plug in my computer because I realized that I totally failed to do that before the stream.
That woman said she was patrolling for the Abbey. What's that mean exactly?
They're hand-picked agents who travel the kingdom gauging the Abbey's success in the demon fight. They also make sure the other exorcists are conducting themselves properly. I suppose you could liken them to military police. Since the Abbey imposes so many rules on the populace, they want to show they're above board.
But if they need to police themselves, isn't that as good as announcing corruption in the ranks?
Some would say it's more honest this way. Idealism alone won't change the world. Maybe that's why our determined little exorcist was crying.
I bet you're right. That does fit the picture.
Although it's best not to take a woman's tears at face value.
Huh?
Just some common wisdom.
Yeah, speaking of authoritarianism, already got a pretty direct call out of a police state that the Abbey is building. I'm not hitting myself, I swear. Speaking of bugs in my apartment, I accidentally appear to have let a fly in when I was cooking a steak right before the stream, so it has found me and is very interested in me.
That was a good session, if I do say so myself. Tomorrow's drill will be even faster.
I thought he was being a crazy demon again, but come to think of it, this is just him being him.
Yeah, that cut-in I have a harder time explaining away the way that I did Velvet's outfit, Grail, so I might have to give you that one. All right, onward. There you go, and leave it to a Tales game to add its own spin and interpretation on things, right? Especially at this point in the series, they're pretty reliable for that. Not even at this point, across the series, they're a good, reliable place for that. Is this the cave to the north? Seems that way.
Here I come.
Oh, sick! I love that. I'm laughing because I'm beginning to remember my experience of a lot of this game's combat system, where especially as you gain abilities like Therionizing and sucking up the abilities of different enemies, like oftentimes Velvet will pull off crazy combos and abilities, and I have no idea how or why they happened, but they're amazing and I love them. I had forgotten how often that happened, but it's all coming back to me now. Oh yes, congrats on the snake, Grail. I missed that you had beaten it.
I unleashed all my power. Maybe I overdid it.
There's nothing like a hard-won Tales battle. Oh my god, this fly is going to make me lose my mind. Right, different enemy types give you different abilities and combo finishers, right? Very cool, though, because for a while, as you're fighting new enemy types, you never really know what you're going to get.
Don't waste my time.
I prefer when I have my dog as a guest star on the stream, but I think tonight we instead have as a guest star the most aggressive fly in the world. It literally just flew into my eye, which I didn't even know was a thing flies could do. Never a dull moment.
What's that smell?
Oil?
Zoinks. Well, while we're venturing through this dungeon, my real-life JRPG party, I might as well ask you, I was catching up with an old friend of mine the other day, and his girlfriend recommended a game to me. It sounded really interesting. I'd never heard of it before. It's more in the spirit of Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Souls-like, I guess, than JRPGs. But I was wondering whether any of you had heard of it or played it, because I never had. Fear and Hunger. I guess it's kind of more of a, like, older school stylized Souls-like, with a lot of horror elements and, like, choice and outcome variant storytelling. So it sounded right up my alley, but as I said, I'd never even heard of it. Grail, I don't know if you're joking or not about the fly thing, but that is a risky comment to make right now, my friend. It sounded right up my alley, so if I end up playing it or trying it out, I will definitely report back. Oh, Pink Moon Neko, since you're hanging out now, I've already asked Grail this, but Grail, obviously feel free to chime in with your answer or to add to your answer. My friend and colleague Dan Hughes and I are going to be lecturing at a video game convention, PAX West, on Labor Day weekend, actually about JRPGs and the Pokemon series, and part of the conceit of our talk is going to be
I think we might be able to break this boulder.
thinking about like how you define a JRPG, since you know there are so many different things that you might call a JRPG, and different people have very different perspectives on what makes a game count as a JRPG or not. So the whole like the game of our talk is going to be a debate about whether or not Pokemon should count as a JRPG. So Pink Moon Neko, since you're here and hanging out and obviously interested in JRPGs, I figured I'd ask you, you know, if a gamer who didn't really play JRPGs were to come to you and say, hey, you know, I'm interested in JRPGs, but I don't really know like what they're about or what to expect. Could you tell me what one is? Like, how would you define one to an interested gamer who's never played one before?
Party.
I'm serious. I think we can do it. Are we not demons?
You have a point.
Gaining our first field skill. I love it. Oh, we can just kick right through it. Nothing like some good martial arts. Demonic martial arts, I should say. Yes, please. Hello. Thank you so much. Those chests are really cute in design until you stop and think about how they're imprisoning poor defenseless creatures until we can open them. Talk about animal liberation, am I right?
Always ready to fight. Oh, up! Deception! Deception!
Animal-ish liberation, then, Grail. Fine, point taken. As soon as I said that, I knew you were going to call me out on that too, you bastard. Japan animated, usually role-playing game, usually adventurous.
I'll cut down anyone in my way.
Grail, if there's one thing that the Tales games have taught us, it's that you always have a choice. Especially when it seems like you don't. Tales of Praxis, baby. Pink Moon Echo, thank you for sharing your definition. I think that's really interesting. It's interesting to me, too, that you mentioned them being Japanese, because to me, you know, I'm someone for whom that's always seemed really obvious. Like, it's in the name, it's a JRPG, the J stands for Japanese. Of course, it's going to be coming from Japan. But then my buddy Dan made the point to me that there are some, like, Western-made games that feel more like JRPGs than Western RPGs. Like, I guess one of the very popular examples, and this made sense to me when he said it, was something like Undertale, right? Like, Toby Fox wasn't coming out of Japan making that. But you sit down and play Undertale, a lot of people would say it has more in common, at least with a JRPG than a Western RPG.
Watch your step.
Which then makes you wonder, like, is it really a part of the JRPG that it has to come out of Japan? I don't know. I'm asking because I'm definitely still working through my own answers to these questions. So I think it's interesting stuff to think about, especially as we're kind of neck deep in JRPGs on the stream here. I think that's another interesting question too, Grail. And, without too many spoilers for the panel, this is part of what Dan and I are thinking we'll be talking about at PAX. There's this question of, okay, first, how do you define a genre, like a JRPG or a first-person shooter or a survival horror game, whatever genre you want to be talking about? And then, two, what's the point at which it kind of no longer is useful to talk about a genre because you're deep enough in a game that you're more interested in what the game itself has to say versus how it relates to any other games. For instance, and this is probably going to be one of the examples that I'm using because I want to bring Tales of Praxis into the lecture. I think it's safe to say that pretty much everyone would agree that the Tales games are categorically JRPGs, but then when we're doing something like Tales of Praxis, it's not so much that we're thinking about them as JRPGs. Like sometimes, of course, we're going to talk about them as a JRPG and how they play with JRPG tropes, but much more often, I feel like it's useful to think of them just as their own language that is unique to the Tales series and ask and answer questions like, what does Tales of Berseria have to say relative to something like Tales of Symphonia or Tales of the Abyss, and how is it subverting things that happen in Tales of Zestiria? And questions that have more to do with kind of the internal logic or language of one series or artistic universe rather than a genre. And I think for basically any game, there's definitely a point at which the usefulness of genre gives out and you want to think about it more on its own terms, but it's not always obvious where exactly that point is. Wittgenstein, actually, because for people who don't know on the stream, I wrote a book about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and the philosopher Wittgenstein and how his work in life can inform the way you think about the game last year. And he actually said something pretty interesting and pertinent about Shakespeare's works, which is not the worst way in the world to wrap your head around what you're talking about. What I'm talking about, rather. So I wanted to read it to you real quick. Because he had this idea. He didn't think about all art this way, but Wittgenstein thought a lot about art over the course of his career, and he was always really frustrated by Shakespeare because he recognized here's a guy who clearly did stuff that was artistically important, and a lot of people who know what they're talking about recognize value in him. But for the life of him, Wittgenstein himself couldn't figure out how to appreciate or like any of Shakespeare's plays or art. And so at the end of the day, he kind of decided if Shakespeare is doing anything that is worthwhile, it's so much like its own universe that Shakespeare has created that it's not even really useful to compare it to anything else. In the same way that I was just talking about, like, the difference between thinking of the Tales series as JRPG versus just its own standalone series of artworks that you can kind of consider in a vacuum. So this is what Wittgenstein wrote when he was trying to talk himself into understanding Shakespeare. He said, Shakespeare and the dream. A dream is all wrong, absurd, composite, and yet completely right. In this strange concoction, it makes an impression. Why? I don't know. And if Shakespeare is great, as he is said to be, then we must be able to say of him, everything is wrong, things aren't like that, and is all the same completely right according to a law of its own. It could be put like this, too. If Shakespeare is great, then he can be so only in the whole corpus of his plays, which create their own language and world. So he is completely unrealistic, like the dream. And I think that's what I'm driving at and kind of what I'm thinking about as I'm doing more research into JRPGs for this lecture and working on Tales of Praxis and everything beyond, the way in which, to crib Wittgenstein's words, these games and these series create their own language and world. And then when we want to think about broader genres like the JRPG, how can that be useful to understanding those sub-languages and worlds, and vice versa? How can deeply focusing into a particular game or series of games give us more insight into the substance of the genre of which it is a part? Oh, I should catch up on your messages before we go on. I love having an active chat. That's such a nice new aspect to the stream. So I hope we're able to keep the party going. This is so nice. Yeah, Pizzicato 5, welcome back. Great to see you, first of all. One thing that really sticks out to me about what you say in terms of it being characteristic of the games that they're pretty linear and you don't have a lot of choice is one thing that's always struck me about Dawn of the New World in terms of what makes it feel unusual in the Tales series, and I guess even as a JRPG, is it feels very much to me like a stylistic deviation that not only do you have optionality within the narrative as the player, but you're actually able to make choices that literally change the outcome of the entire story at the end of the game. And I can't even put my finger on why that's the case, except to say that it feels very different than what I would expect from a JRPG. So I do feel like there's something there. That's a really interesting point to bring up. Yeah, Pink Moon Echo. That's a great point about Pokemon kind of feeling more like its own thing or something that doesn't quite satisfy the JRPG tropes. That's a similar spirit to where I think Dan is going to be going with his talk about Pokemon in this lecture that we're giving. This idea that, like, look, even if it has some things in common with JRPGs, Pokemon is very much like its own thing, kind of similar to what Grail was saying about like Earthbound and Undertale, such that it's more useful to think about it on its own terms and within its own ecosystem rather than just applying what would in this context be a reductive label to it and saying, oh, it's a JRPG or something like that. Oh, Pizzicato 5, were you talking about what you said in comparison with Wittgenstein? I mean, we can never compare ourselves to Wittgenstein, right? He's kind of without comparison. But I think he himself was also the master of comparisons and using analogy to illuminate things, which I think is why, A, he has a quote for everything, and B, he can be really useful for illuminating conversations like this. But all of these comments are similarly incisive and useful, so definitely don't think less of any of them. And yeah, I think to that point, Pizzicato 5, what you're saying, I think, drives to the heart of a lot of this. Like, genres almost just by nature of the beast have to be kind of sufficiently generic that they're not going to give you individual insights into games. I think if anything, like, and this is part of what I'm thinking about as I'm asking myself, how is a term like JRPG going to be useful going forward? It's sort of a jumping off point for giving you like footholds or something to push against when you're trying to do comparative analysis between different game series. So it might not be that conducive to understanding the Tales series better to say, like, this is a JRPG and let's study this as a JRPG. But if I wanted to ask a question like, how is Tales of Symphonia similar to and different than Kingdom Hearts? Then saying, okay, well, let's say they're both JRPGs and start from there and see how they do that similarly and differently. It can be a kind of middle ground that gives us just a frame of reference for kicking off that kind of comparison. Okay, here we have another definition in the mix. Narrative-driven, adventure game, visual novel, hybrid. That's so funny because like half of my brain when I read that Pizzicato 5 is like I'm having a stroke because there are so many buzzwords, but also the other half, like reading that, it just feels like deeply right to me in a way that I can't quite put my finger on. Maybe that's part of why JRPGs are an interesting genre. They're sort of like a hodgepodge of several different things that brings out this kind of magical element you wouldn't get in any of the constitutive elements. That feels right to me. Those words were words of the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, who was this Viennese fellow in the 20th century, who many regard as one of kind of the leading thinkers of the modern age and definitely one of the most kind of influential figures in analytic philosophy, which is kind of my academic tradition and discipline. He was the subject of my book-length study on Xenoblade Chronicles 3 because I think the game can be uniquely well read through the lens of his life and philosophy, and not just how he thought about the world, but how his perspective on the world and his views on like the nature of philosophy changed over his life. So here, I'll drop the citation for people who are interested, and then if you wanted to find that quote on Shakespeare, which is in a section that is more broadly about how Wittgenstein thinks about interpretation, which I think is really useful for these kinds of conversations we're having. You can just Control F for Shakespeare, and that'll pull you right to the relevant section of the study. Yes, yeah, it's one of those trickeries of the German language where the W actually sounds like a V. So, yeah, a lot of people who have read the name but not taken German don't know how to pronounce it, because why would you? I just happen to have, for reasons that kind of now escape me, taken 4 years of the German language in high school, so I have kind of the uniquely unusual overlap to do things like pronounce the name of Ludwig Wittgenstein, I guess. Oh, games that force you to think. That's fun. I missed that. Yeah, Pink Moon Echo, I'm with you. That does seem broad, but there's I mean, this is the fun thing about talking through these definitions, right? Like, we're never all going to agree on the definition of something like JRPG, but each definition we give kind of, at least to me, points at some truth of the genre and what people are interested in about it. Because I mean, that's one of the things that I think has kept me coming back to JRPGs as I've gotten older, the idea that their stories do have a special language for not just taking you on really emotionally moving journeys, but journeys where by the end of it, if the story has been done right and you've been paying attention, it's really challenged you to think about some pretty tough and real and human concepts in ways that, at least for me, oftentimes go beyond the scope of the game and really get you to rethink your standing as an agent and a human in the real world and how you want to conduct yourself and live your life.
Don't waste my time. They were nothing. I'll end this quickly.
Now, Grail, I know from you that dangerous encounters, or whatever they call it in this game, are introduced at some point. But I guess we're in that weird early game liminal space where a key game mechanic hasn't yet been introduced because we're running into clumps of enemies and only getting one encounter at a time. Which honestly, I'm not going to complain too much about. It makes the encounters very livable. Or survivable, I guess I should say. Persona 5 Royal, that is definitely a game that is still high on my list, because it's one of those games. I don't know if you all get this, but I feel like when you're a gamer who has a specific enough taste in games or view on which games are worth your time, and you're vocal enough about it, everyone in your life, whenever they play a game that you would like, they like immediately recognize, oh, this is a game that feels like you and you definitely have to play it. Which is to say that a bunch of people have told me over the years, Aaron, you need to play Persona 5 Royal because you would be kept up at night thinking about Persona 5 Royal. So I know it's that kind of game that I'm never going to be able to put down once I get to it. But I haven't. I started 5 quite a while ago, and I kind of had the mixed fortune of starting it with a girl I was seeing at the time, and then we split up before I finished the game, so I kind of never went back to the playthrough. But I definitely want to revisit those games at some point. It's also just hard to justify picking up a famously long JRPG and then another long JRPG that's a follow-up on it while I'm also doing Tales of Praxis and working through the whole Tales series. Timing is everything, right? Oh, we're learning all about a bunch of different field skills in this dungeon here.
I'm going to jump.
Don't fall and crack your skull.
Oh, really, Grail? That's interesting. You feel it hasn't aged well, or do you just feel like you found other games that say what it's trying to say in more interesting or compelling ways? Or is your problem with it something else entirely? I will say for me, you know, if we wanted to try to narrow down the idea of games that make you think, I think one sort of flavor of making you think that a JRPG is distinctly known for is it's the old cliche idea of, oh, you know, you start out in a small town in a JRPG and by the end you're gonna fight and kill God. I think the kernel of truth in that is the idea that JRPGs do have a special language for, like, at the conclusion of their stories, introducing, like, abstract concepts as the final entry. As the final enemy in the game. So in a lot of games, even if it's a game that makes you think, by the end of the narrative, you're still going to be in a pretty, like, concrete and realistic context, fighting something that is a pretty concrete or literal enemy, whether that's, you know, a person or a monster or something like that. Whereas in JRPGs, you know, you end up fighting stuff like God or Necron or like the abstractification of mythos in the final confrontation against him in Tales of Symphonia, right? There are a million examples of that. And I think that is something where, like, JRPGs are uniquely good not only at arriving at a very abstract and conceptual enemy to confront, but also constructing very long and robust storylines so that you're able to start out in a realistic context and abstract away from that piece by piece so that you really see how the most abstract and theoretical directly applies to and inform the lived-in world that you've experienced over 50 or 60 hours or what have you.
Are we ready for this?
I don't know if we are ready for this, Velvet, but we can try. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Persona 4 over the years, Grail. That's another one I haven't played. It's all about the humor, right? Didn't realize there was another little one left. I keep forgetting you can move the camera angle now. Oh man, I wasn't watching your health. Oh, there we go. That helps. Nope, didn't like that. Oh my god, stop dazing me, bro. Jesus Christ! I was really hoping that would gank him. Oh, he's so close. Come on. Just finish him. Alright, there we go. Oh, I shouldn't have gotten any grade for that. That was horrible. I got a lot to learn about this combat system, my friends. But we made it. A win's a win. Wouldn't count as a win for Grail in the face of the challenge run that Grail's doing, but a win's a win for us on this stream.
Here I come.
I felt like it was trying to teach me the same thing, but I don't know that I learned the lesson. And something tells me I'm going to have plenty of other opportunities for some remedial lessons in the same thing.
You're a fine swordsman.
Not as far as I'm concerned. I still have a long way to go.
I think that's the thing about a JRPG, for better or worse in a lot of my experience, Pink Moon Echo. There are just so many hours and so many experiences in it that when it all sums up to some really cohesive message and sense of story and theme that means something to you, it can be really touching and beautiful. But on the other hand, when it's something that either doesn't really resonate with you or goes in a bunch of different directions and feels like a million little things that are not satisfying, it can really, it kind of, even if you don't realize it at the time, like you were saying, Grail, over time, it can sort of weigh on you and change your opinion of it in a way that can really sour you for something where you have to invest especially so much time and kind of expect a correspondingly satisfying and worthwhile payoff for it.
What sort of demon are you?
A Yaksha. I'm a war demon.
A war demon. Makes sense.
And what about you? You're awfully peculiar, even for a demon.
I'm a Therian.
Therian? That's a new one for me. What sort of demon is that?
A super cool kind.
A monster that feeds on foes to gain power. I don't know much beyond that.
A woman who devours her enemies. I bet your demon type is hag. Am I right?
What?
Brutal.
Whoa. You've got the death glares down at least.
That's an interesting kind of echo of Zestiria that I never would have caught had we not just played it as well. The idea that one of the, I would say, more fleshed out and interesting side quests in Zestiria is the triad of the Fortin sisters, I think is their name. The cardinal whom you face in the main game, and then her two sisters whom you can find in side quests that ultimately lead back to their hometown when you learn about how they came to be. So to have that kind of focus on specifically like women who were misunderstood and scorned and ultimately Helionized because of their feelings of kind of resentment towards people in their lives and the desires that pushed them towards, if I'm remembering the broad strokes of the side quest in the right way, and then to transition from that into a game where, along some dimensions at least, you have a protagonist who's painted in a very similar light. That's an interesting way of following up on a relatively minor theme or detail from the previous game, in sort of the same way, I guess, that Dawn of the New World platforms off of a lot of the side content of Tales of Symphonia as much as the content in the main story.
What sword style do you use? Who taught you?
I'm self-taught.
For being self-taught, you're really good. Your fundamentals are solid too.
Yeah, Therian is an enemy type in Zestiria Grail. I was noticing that this time through.
Unusual.
In anticipation
Like I
of Berseria.
said, it's my own style. And what about you, huh? What's with those two swords? You say that big one is your life, yet you never even draw it.
It's best that I don't.
Huh? Is that part of what you learned at House Urangetsu?
Yeah, we pay our debts. That's the foundation of everything we do.
I don't get it.
Always ready to fight.
I do really like the combination of controller vibration and the fact that you can't be staggered out of Therianizing. It makes it feel like an appropriately powerful and monstrous attack type. And of course just makes it easier to use, which I'm here for.
You won't get any pity or compassion from me.
Is there a way to open that up as a shortcut for later? Or is that just... Nope. Oh, looks like we might be able to gain a new platforming skill to jump between those poles later. But not now. Wow! I really need to figure out how to set up a camera facing out these windows at some point, because I wish I could show you all what I'm looking at. It's, I guess at this point, characteristically stormy weather here in Colorado. So I'm playing the game, and truly out the windows that are just on the other side of my monitor, like the biggest strokes of lightning across the entire sky are going off pretty regularly. Like the biggest I've ever seen, I think. It's nuts. I wish we were at a more epic and climactic point in the game, because that would tonally match the lightning much better than quietly wandering through this cave. God, it's nuts. It's like Sid from Final Fantasy XVI is out there channeling Rama right now. When you say they suck, Grail, do you mean they suck just in terms of not being that narratively interesting or differentiated from each other, or something else?
Come on, really?
On to battle.
Oddly shaped, but at least so far, and I may be jinxing myself by saying this, they feel less labyrinthine than Zestiria's dungeons did. Like, I don't experience them as if I'm constantly at risk of getting hopelessly lost. Artorius' throne!
Come on, really?
That's insane. There was just like a single vertical bolt of lightning that was sustained for maybe a good 5 seconds outside before it dissipated. God, I hope these things aren't hitting houses or anything.
You said you can't taste anything. How is your sense of smell?
Why do you ask?
Those two senses work together. You know, like how if you pinch your nose while you eat, the flavor goes away?
If anything, I think my sense of smell has improved. What about you?
All my senses are sharper now. Still, being able to smell but not taste. You said Eutherians eat demons, right? Not what I'd call a pleasant diet.
Look who's talking. What do you eat?
I drink, mostly.
That doesn't sound pleasant either.
Nonsense. There's nothing with more depth and variety. Every ingredient, every process alters the whole. The rich, complex flavor dancing across the tongue. The mellow aroma exhilarating the nose. But what would a child know of such things?
Whatever.
The only downside is, now that I'm a demon, the stuff goes to my head faster than before, too.
Now that you're a demon, huh?
Oh man, I feel like I'm gonna have to get a nice bottle of sake or something for our Friday night stream. Pour one out for our man Rokuro. I forgot the value of a good drink was such a core part of his character. He gets me. How did they break into my life and steal all of my character traits and then repackage them as a character in this JRPG? Just when I was starting to get anxiety about how long it had been since we last saved. Oh, I need to remember that this game has quick saving. That would have been smart to do before that bet. Oh, we figured it out. I love that. I forgot about that added mobility.
An exorcist.
Did he slip and fall?
No,
Oh.
he was thrown in.
Monsieur Dial, I presume? Demon Dial. We got it in one. Harsh rebuttal to searing edge to tearing thorn. Alright. I can just map it that way, right? That'll do it. Have we gotten any other hidden arts yet? Boy, it's a slow burn with getting these arts. I was just thinking maybe we should try to integrate some other ones, but it doesn't appear as if we really have any others yet. I guess Swallow Dance is the other new one that we didn't have before. Oh, there we go. That's a combo! We mapped our first combo to one of the buttons. Boy, this game is different. Swallow Dance isn't a hidden art, though. It's a martial art. But it is new. Oh, thank you, Grail. No, I did not remember that at all. That does make me feel better. Any safety net they'll give me, I will gladly take. Awesome.
Found our murderer. More fools from Hellaboo. Came hunting me down, did you?
It seems that way.
Oh, they tell you the timing of upcoming arcs? That's cool. I feel like they were beginning to try to do that in Zestiria. Like, they would tell you when you assigned a title what the next art you would learn what that title was. I'll have to check that out after this fight. Without can we get to the status menu? No, we can't get to the status menu from battle. Hey, quit it. Hey, I'm streaming. Me like Blue Inferno. It's a very cool finisher.
I won't die yet. Not until I have my revenge.
Is this a mirror?
Revenge?
I'm interested.
Bastards at the guild who tried to kill me. They want me to take the fall for their smuggling operation.
Wait, are you saying the whole guild was involved?
Of course. You think a second-rate sailor like me could pull off all that mischief by myself? I mean, sure, I was in on it. Helping them wasn't without its benefits.
He has a point. It would take more than one person to dig that tunnel into the warehouse.
Problem is, our extra-legal activities were a little too successful. The Abbey was bound to notice us at some point.
And dead men tell no tales. So they blame it on you and kill you to cover it up. Looks like it's not going quite how they planned.
How do you mean to get this revenge of yours?
A raid on Hellabys. I'll kill the lot of them. This I swear.
That would be suicide. Do you have any idea how many exorcists are around?
They'll hunt me down no matter what I do. I just want the guild to pay for what they did to me. That's all I wanted. But I guess even that's not gonna work out.
We'll take this back to town and tell him you're dead. That should be enough to satisfy the Exorcists and get them to call off the search.
But why?
I have my reasons. We need a boat fixed.
Oh, come on, Grail. You know why. It's because she has a soft spot for anyone who loves revenge.
After I leave,
that's her one character trait right now.
Slow down anyone who's following me.
If that's what you want, miss, I won't let you down.
You know what's interesting about this, too? Oh, fantastic. We have wing bottles back. I'd been missing those in Vesperia. Yeah, I'm curious to see if you all agree with me, but obviously it sounds like everyone who's in chat is aware, and I've been messaging this on the stream, so everyone who's been watching Tales of Praxis should be aware that this is a prequel for Tales of Zestiria. But I think one of the things that's cool about the way that it's set up is, even if I had played Zestiria right before Berseria, as I did for the stream, if I didn't already know that from playing all of Berseria before, or someone telling me, I think we could have gotten this far in Berseria and continue going for quite a while before it becomes obvious that it's taking place in the same world as Zestiria, let alone the fact that it's a prequel. Like, obviously, given that we know it's in the same world, we can see a lot of connections between things like Daemonblight and demons and Hellions and the Abbey and shepherds. But if we weren't already aware of that connection, I don't think there's been anything in the story to make clear that it's happening in the very same world that we just experienced in Zestiria, which is pretty interesting to establish and get things going this robustly in a world and story that is going to have such deep ties to another story, without kind of letting the player in on the trick for such a significant amount of the game.
By the way, how on earth did you find out where I was hiding?
Luck. And a solid hunch.
The village I grew up in was the dullest, gloomiest place ever. I hated it so much I became a sailor first chance I could get. But look at me now. If I could do it all again, I wouldn't abandon my home.
I see.
Now I am an old lizard man filled with regret, waiting to die alone. So I remember this about Berseria, and it's really interesting, I think, to keep this in mind as we go through, especially in relation to our different studies and considerations of the Hellions in Zestiria, speaking of connections between the games. Because, remember, we don't know that much about demons yet in terms of what causes them. We know there's Daemonblight that somewhat spontaneously seems to turn people into demons. We also know there are demons like Velvet, who are kind of created through means that are unclear, but they seem to be kind of social and moral outcasts that are seen as kind of the villains of the world. So it's interesting to keep track of as we learn stories like Dial's, like, okay, was society responsible for casting him out? Did he kind of do that to himself? Now that he's a monster, is he leaning into it and being monstrous in the sense of being morally corrupt, or is he trying to use his standing outside of society for his own ends, for some kind of good ends? If there's one thing we learned from Zestiria with the way that it distinguished morality from malevolence and purification, it was that, especially within this world and this universe, those lines are much less clear-cut than you might expect. And so keeping track of it by way of character study as we progress here, I think will be useful for charting the course of what the game is trying to say.
Is this really how you want to play it?
Listen, I'm being hunted too. It's only a matter of time. I can't afford sympathy.
She kind of just extended sympathy to Dial, though. Yeah, that was my plan, Pink Moon Echo, thank you. I just wanted to pop a save first. Yeah, even that perspective that we talked about in Zestiria, though, Grail, I think is an interesting one to just keep track of as we go forward, because, again, distinguish between, like, the demonic and becoming a monster versus becoming, like, a moral monster or something that is reprehensible, because, remember, even, like, we have already, especially in Berseria, portraits of monsters, demons, like Velvet and Rokuro, who fell victim to that in the way that you're talking about, and yet they're not really monstrous in the villainous ways that you would expect. So, like, it's definitely a dangerous and uncertain world, but I think part of the interesting trick of it is people can change at the drop of the hat, but also what they actually make of that change is up to them. Which is a very, Tales 1-2 punch and like call to personal responsibility of the sort that you would get in a lot of these games, I think. Should probably restock on those items we burned to survive that bat fight. I think we're good for now. Well, maybe I'll just stock up on more items. Oh, and I don't think I processed the purchase of the last items. Good, I can live with that. Oh, we can rest at the inn again. Maybe have another skit? See how many inn skits there are? Yeah. So not as many then, I would imagine, because truly until the very end of Zestiria, I don't think we ever had an inn visit where we didn't get a skit. Which was kind of remarkable, even for Tales games. We want to go back to the docks, I reckon. Is that not the right way? The dock's down there. Am I losing my mind? I might be. Yeah, 100% with you on that after our stream, Grail. I think it just, exactly like we were talking about, it takes a lot more effort to excavate the content than with some of the other Tales games where it's much more explicit with it. But it rewards that excavation. I was even eyeing the collector's edition of it earlier today because I got so into it. I thought, mightn't it be nice to get the full box set to kind of honor the experience that we had with it on stream together. We need to sneak in the back, right? It's interesting the way its overworld is composed relative to Zestiria, because I don't even know if I can put my finger on why it is. Maybe just that there are more winding roads and passages between locations, but I feel like already it's, I mean, evidently, much easier for me to get lost in the overworld of Berseria than ever was the case in Zestiria. I was looking into this because as much as I love the Tales series, I think just my growing interest in them never quite intersected with the arc of my growing interest in collecting like collector's editions of games. So I never really saw or followed collector's editions of the Tales games. But I was looking today, and I guess what a decent number of them did was not statues so much. Like they did a statue for Tales of Arise, but a lot of the older ones have like little almost chibi style models of some of the characters. So Zestiria has that. I think I saw the PS3 port of Symphonia and Dawn of the New World has figures like that, which was kind of a draw to me too. I love it when there are special little exclusive things to include such as those. Knowing me, I'll probably bite the bullet at some point. We'll probably have to go down to main town first. I do also feel like pretty much all the Tales games, even though their worlds are pretty differently laid out relative to one another, within each game, the world is pretty consistent in the way you're expected to navigate it, so that oftentimes, even if I feel lost at the beginning of the game like I do here, thinking back, I actually felt similarly disoriented at the start of Zestiria too, especially when it came to navigating like the world map for fast travel and things like that. But after I spend a decent number of hours in virtually any of these worlds, it has a way of becoming second nature. I think it's more just that early game disorientation coupled with my natural eternal just personal inability to navigate. I've always had to use Google Maps even to get around like my hometown neighborhoods and places that I ought to know really, really well.
We're lucky the snow has been white for the past few years. Why is that lucky?
Lila or nothing for you, isn't it, Grail? Speaking of being consistent.
It isn't always. Depending on the direction of the wind and what the volcano is up to, volcanic ash can mix in with the snow and turn it gray.
There's a volcano nearby?
It's actually quite a ways up north, but it's the biggest volcano in all of Midgand. Mount Killerhouse, it's called. And that's where we mine our flamestone. Actually, it's the only place you can mine the stuff.
Mount Killerhouse.
It's got a nice ring to it. You ever seen a volcano, Velvet?
No, and I'm not interested.
Grail, how many times I gotta explain to you, you always have a choice. How many times do the Tales games have to beat it into you, old man? Anyone giving it up for old school SpongeBob references? because that's
We
all
found
I'm
him
made
dead
of.
in the Lake of Tar. This is all we could bring back.
Is that so?
You can doubt me all you like, but I brought you
Yeah,
the
I had that
demon's
thought about the
body.
name too.
Who else can say that?
True enough.
Good. Get to work on my ship.
I wonder if it's drawing on some
We still need
mythology
Lady
or
Teresa's
illusion,
permission
or if it's just a name that they made up.
It would be much worse for you if she knew who the real smugglers were.
Oh!
It's a trade. Repair the ship on the beach, and I'll sail away quietly.
Very well. I'll find you your shipwrights. We'll see you at the shore.
Hey, Velvet. This would be a perfect opportunity for us to upgrade our equipment. How about it?
What are you talking about?
You don't know?
We didn't have anything like that in our village.
All the more reason, then. Come on, let's go.
Hey, you don't need to be so pushy.
That's just how I am. Get used to it. Come on.
Is that what was implied from the start of the game, Grail? What you just asked? Or is that like a spoiler for stuff that we learn later? Because I don't remember that as the way that it's been framed up so far, at least in the part that we've been playing through together. Yeah, I mean, I think that sentiment is kind of what I was gesturing at in terms of the relationship that a lot of the Tales games have with respect to choice versus destiny. Like, a lot of what destiny is just how people decide to live their lives, and there's nothing kind of more metaphysically rigid about it than that. I was talking with Dan about the Tales games the other day because he's been working through 1 million playthroughs of Tales of Symphonia, which is really his first proper Tales game. And he's a huge Final Fantasy buff. And he made the point that he really liked the way that the game focused on choice rather than the way in which a lot of Final Fantasy games represent fate as this objective thing that's out there in the world that you have to fight against and resist or kill. And that struck me as actually a really interesting and cool way and a way that feels right to me of differentiating those two series, because I do feel like Final Fantasy, in so many instances of it, is like a war against fate, whereas many of the Tales games instead locate that capacity to determine yourself within the individual, and there are models of different ways that you could live your life, but there's never any kind of inescapable path that you can't get away from. Tales of Destiny being a great example, even in the name, right? It's a game that is very self-consciously concerned with destiny, but at the end of the day, there's nothing binding these characters together except their decisions to act in a certain way and go on this particular adventure that was very clearly not one that was fated, but simply came about because of the actions and choices that people made in the world. With regard to the start of this one, though, I wouldn't say I got quite the same impression you did, Grail. What I would say so far, and I'm trying not to draw on the stuff that we haven't played yet, but even in terms of the why is it that birds fly motif that has been set up, and then the way in which, especially in the introductory sequence, Arthur and Velvet were talking around the way that Velvet's nature makes her more inclined towards emotion than reason, followed up with the way that the characters have been acting in the current time of the narrative. I feel like the focus is on the idea that there are certain choices or ways of seeing the world that make more sense to us based on our nature and just who we are. And that doesn't give us a fate so much, but the more that we can recognize that nature, the better advantage we can take of all of the choices that are available to us, because we're more honest about what it is that drives us and how we see the world, and can therefore act as better, more holistically empowered agents in that world. I like that they're forcing us to do the whole enhancement and dismantling tutorial, because I kind of regret never doing any of the equipment fusion in Zestiria. And I think part of it was truly just that the game never forced me through a tutorial with it, so it always felt a little foreign and alien to me. And I do want to try to, you know, see everything that the system has to offer this time around. Wow, did you all hear that thunderclap? That was insane. I could hear that really vividly through my headphones. My poor little girl is cowering underneath my legs as we go through this tutorial. Yeah, I feel like that one might have been, like, on my block, that lightning strike. Well, God bless Longmont, Colorado's internet. City provided fiber as a public utility, so knock on wood, we won't have any stream interruptions.
And that's how it's done. Get it?
I suppose. It seems like kind of a hassle.
That's what I'm saying.
First, sure. But once you get it down, it'll be second nature. You'll eventually learn how to maximize your personal strengths through wise upgrading and dismantling.
It does seem useful.
Right? If you plan to continue your crusade, upgrading may give you the edge you need.
No pun intended.
Of course, those who are inadequately prepared for battle probably won't end up on the winning side.
That's certainly true enough. And hey, if it'll make me stronger, I'm sure I'll figure it out. If it'll help me take him down.
That's all I care about. Oh, Grail, I don't envy you that, my friend. I used to live in New York City for a spell, so I definitely know that game, but I am just, speaking of natures and how people are built, I am so not equipped to handle just chronic loud noise in my environment. Which is a bummer, because I do expect to move back to a larger city with more noise one of these days, but right now I am, like, properly in the middle of nowhere, Colorado, which suits me just fine. I have, like, one neighbor in my apartment complex who has an unreasonably loud car, and he's my nemesis, and that's all I have to deal with, and that is an adequate amount of noise pollution for me. Oh, we're poor. I suppose we can check on whether our ship is ready yet. There you go, Grail. I knew if we just kept beating it into you, you'd get it eventually. Yeah, I get that, though. My heart goes out to you. Sometimes even if you technically have a choice, you gotta be where you are for the moment. That's a big part of where I am for the moment, too. I feel that. Oh, is that right, Grail? Is this one where you recommend playing as characters other than Velvet in combat? Yeah, I think that's right. Is that in this direction? Again, I cannot express how lost I already am.
Looks like we'll
there
get
we
the
go.
repairs
All right.
we need.
Maybe, but that's only half of our problem. Without a proper crew, we'll wind up shipwrecked again.
We don't have time to find one, and we can't hire a ship without permission.
We'll just have to do what we can. But we've seen where my...
Oh, that's right, because we ran aground at
Not
the end
forcing
of
you to
last
come.
stream. Right. I'm caught
I'll
up.
do it alone if I have to.
I wonder if there are any free sailors around.
If we only had a sailor. Wonder whom we could find for that kind of role. Yeah, that's fair, Grail. I think you can probably tell that's already a bit of my playstyle, and I'm definitely beginning to remember that that was a lot of what carried me through my first playthrough of this. I will commit to trying other characters at some point during this stream, though, because I would, especially after all of the cool things you've had to say about just the value of versatility and trying out all of the different battle types. You've really kind of talked me into it. And I think it is a good way to appreciate just all of the characteristics of these really interesting party members and get a different perspective on the battle mechanics, as you were saying. Wait, Pikmu Neko, whom are you bopping on the head? And why?
Hey, Velvet. Do the demons you kill turn back into humans?
Huh? What are you talking about?
Remember the demon that attacked us near the coast? When it died, it turned back into a human. Every demon I've killed has stayed a demon. So, I was just wondering what was different.
Do demons stay demons when they die? But what about Nico and the villagers I killed?
Maybe it's just a case-by-case sort of thing.
Who cares? A corpse is a corpse, whether it's human or demon.
Yeah. I guess being human again doesn't help much if you're already dead.
Exactly. All that matters is that the demons I devour make me stronger. Nothing more.
What could make the difference for Velvet? It wouldn't be a JRPG if we weren't setting up interesting core mysteries that won't be answered for tens of hours. Oh, yes, true enough, Big Moon Echo. Yeah, this game definitely has a penchant for bopping you on the head with all variety of stuff, doesn't it? It's, you know, it's a good way of helping you keep track of things, sometimes. In moderation, I guess.
Her keel's busted. It'd be faster to build a new ship.
Her keel?
You could say she's like a man with a broken back.
And how in blazes did you end up running aground here? I wouldn't think it possible.
Don't worry about
If you
that.
can't help, that's enough. Go back to town.
What now? Do we try to find a new ship?
I can't think of anything else. I just hope we have time.
O Empyrean Innominat, hear my prayer. Blessings and honor unto thee.
You know me not. That's a great name.
This frail flesh a sacrifice to be thy foundation.
Sister.
Oh, Oscar! What brings you here? Your face! What happened to you?
A demon got the better of me. I've been summoned back to the Abbey, but I thought I'd stop by on my way.
My poor brother. I'm so sorry.
There is pain, but I can still fight. The scar will serve to remind me of my inexperience.
An underhanded foe, no doubt.
No. The demon saps her enemy's strength.
Okay, Grail, you got me with that one. That was good.
It was a girl with black hair and eyes full of fire.
No, it's fine. It'll be cool. Now I have a distinctive, neat anime feature to my appearance. A mysterious scar.
It was her.
Teresa?
Understood. I will. Worry not. A failure as minor as this is not the end of the world.
To be honest, I came hoping you would cheer me up like that. Well, I do believe I recognize those earrings.
Of course. I treasure them dearly. Thank you.
They suit you just as well as I thought they would. I must take my leave now.
Oh wow, I thought you were joking, Grail.
Stowaway. I wasn't stowing away, you twit. I merely bored
I apologize.
permission.
You're a collaborator with that demon woman. Where is she?
I think it's probably a good thing that you don't share the strange sister thing.
Are useless against the mighty Magilu. Because I'll spill my guts just fine without him.
Magilu. Girl, what are you doing? Oh, absolutely, Grail. I'm sure she'll do nothing bad ever for the entirety of this 60-hour adventure. That was actually one of my favorite things about Berseria. Not one of my favorites, but something that I enjoyed more than I thought I would and that I had forgotten. Because, you know, there's always a traitor or redeemed traitor character in most JRPGs and most Tales games. And, like, when the party meets Raven, pretty much right away in Tales of Vesperia, they all just say to him, like, yeah, we know you're going to betray us. You are not a trustworthy or believable person. Like, we can't stop you from coming with us, but don't, like, try to gain our trust.
There was word from the Abbey. They're holding a public
I
execution.
found a lot of love for Raven this time around in that game.
Is that so? Sounds like a real nasty character.
I'd stay away from the city if I were you. It's a common tactic for Lady Teresa. Threaten one criminal to draw out their allies.
Are you saying I'm a criminal? Pot calling the kettle black, isn't it?
That's why I'm warning you. Lady Teresa's top class, even among Exorcist praetors. I wouldn't
That's
think
the beauty
badly
of it,
you if you
Grail.
fled.
A witch. It has to
It's
be.
what happens when you hang out with a person for long enough, right? The mere exposure effect. Just by being around them, you trust them more.
No sense trying to buy a ship now.
Then don't buy one. Steal it.
Steal a ship from Helavis. Just the two of us.
We have at least one other on our side.
Dial?
He said he can navigate. If he joins forces with us, all the better.
That could be. But what happens to Magilu?
I suppose that's up to the Abbey. Let's head to Dial's cave.
Sorry, Magilu. Rest in peace.
So, I was trying to see, can we fast travel to the cave? Huh? No, I'm not seeing any option 2. I think we have to hoof it? Oh, for real? There was a shortcut and I missed opening it? That really bums me out. Well, maybe we can open it this time. On the way back to the cave. Oh, thank you, Grail. Now it is I who feels seen. Over here, I assume? Oh, well, I was thinking we'd be able to open whatever we needed to from here, but I guess not. Oh, back to the cave. I did say that. Thank you for reminding me. Oh, it's the rock. Okay, I just didn't know what to look for as a shortcut. It's a different kind of field navigation in this game. I don't have rocks of that kind coded as things you can interact with. So this is a good lesson for me. Good. All right. Better late than never. Even though now we probably won't have occasion to come back here, but that's okay. Status screen. Oh yeah, Mega Sonic Thrust. Look at that. Oh, so it doesn't say what level they're going to learn it at. I thought it might do that. Because I assume it's not indicating you're going to learn that art the next time you level up. But that is nice. Yeah, like a simpler version of what they had attached to titles in Zestiria. Nice.
You really go all out, don't you?
What do you mean?
Look, you're using Dial, threatening the guild, abandoning...
Oh, come, Grail, don't say that.
I'm not abandoning her.
Give it a chance,
she
at
can
least.
Take care of herself.
Nothing stops you, does it?
There's a lot I don't understand about Magulu, but I know she won't be killed so easily. Besides, I'm sure she's already told the Abbey everything she knows about us.
You're probably right.
That means we need an ace up our sleeve. Like a demon they believe to be dead.
That is a pretty good ace.
All right. One last good sharpening and I'll call this blade done. Do your blades need sharpening too? I'd be happy to take care of it for you if you want.
No thanks. I was taught never to leave my lifeline in the hands of another.
Sure. Sounds like you found a good teacher. I don't care if it's me who does it, as long as you're keeping them well maintained. Just in case you don't already know, after you sharpen your blades, you should rub them with clove oil and wipe them down with wool.
Yeah, I know. I was taught that too. By the man who killed my brother.
Yeah, thank you, Grail. That's what I was hoping. Good way to force you to learn those fast travel mechanics, I suppose. Having a reason to use it right away.
What are you two doing back here?
Things didn't work out. We'll lend a hand with your raid.
Awfully presumptuous, aren't you?
I'm a demon. Comes with the territory.
You got me there. Ah, God. I think that's the first time I've laughed since turning demon. But are you sure? It's suicide, you know.
Maybe not. I have a plan. The Exorcists have a hostage they're using to lure me into the city.
then we can sneak in through the tunnel into the storehouse.
No. I expect they'll have an ambush ready there. So instead, we hit them with a direct frontal assault.
You call that a plan?
No, I call it a feint. As their forces converge on the front, a second group slips in via the tunnel, strikes the docks, and secures a ship. After that, the two groups meet up and we all sail away. And I want you at the helm.
Answer me this, then. Who's making this frontal assault of yours?
I will, naturally.
That works. When?
Tomorrow. Can we rest here until then?
Make yourself at home. Nothing so comfy as a bed of tar.
Velvet? Hey, Velvet? Luffy? You were crying out. Were you having a nightmare?
I was... Oh, Luffy! It was terrible!
Hey, come on, let go of me. I have to go. I have something important to do.
What's that?
Arthur told me to come meet him at the Shrine of Tranquility.
No, Luffy said! No! Listen to me! Artorius is... He's going to...
Are you all right? You were tossing and turning.
I'm fine. It was just a dream. If you don't want to go with me, I understand.
That wouldn't do. How can I repay you if you die?
You are an odd one.
Am I? I always thought of me as just me. Velvet, who's this Artorius?
My target. He killed my brother.
We're ready. Dial should be at the entrance.
Let's get going then.
I love those dream sequences with the clean white background and kind of minimalist representation of whatever Velvet is thinking about. So many Tales games and characters in the Tales parties and villains in the Tales games too have such deep-seated and really complicated and interesting trauma that haunts them. But I think the particular artistic lens with which this game articulates Velvet's of the kind that we just saw in that sequence is, it strikes me at least, as pretty unusual and an interesting way of getting inside her head and keeping track of her personality is obviously more robust than mere revenge and callousness, even if that's what she's kind of taught to project to the outside world in order to survive in her new sort of existence that she's been forced into.
Sleep well?
Just fine, thanks. And your special concoction?
Ready for deployment anytime. By the way, I never caught your name.
Velvet.
We'll sail together if you live, Velvet. If not, at least I know what to put on your tombstone.
You've got a sharp tongue.
I've always been that way.
Right then, we're off to attack Helives. That reminds me. Where do you think that boy who took the compass ran off to?
Helives, I'd imagine, since Malachim are always tethered to Exorcists.
That means we might run into him during our attack.
Are you getting squeamish about killing the boy because you feel indebted to him for healing you?
No. If he gets in the way, I'll take him down.
But?
I have to remember to thank him first.
Right.
Does that bother you at all?
No, not really. I just know that Malachim don't taste very good.
Malachim don't suit your palate? I'll call that a positive.
Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight, folks. On the one hand, I hate to wrap things up on a climax. On the other hand, I feel like this was a nice... almost kind of an interesting mirror to what we got in the first stream, because we got something that felt very slice of life in terms of Velvet's childhood and that calm before the storm with Laphicet and Arthur in the days leading up to the Advent. And now I feel like in this section we've gotten kind of a structurally mirrored slice of life in terms of what the world looks like and what it is to live in it 3 years later, between learning about the Abbey and the influence that they have on places, to what various townspeople feel about the nature of demons and the Abbey's influence on everything and the role that guilds play in the world, to the actual lived experiences of other demons like Dial in this world, and obviously started to uncover a little bit about a range of characters, some of whom will be with us for quite some time in our future adventures here. I think we're teeing up a very fun adventure for the next stream, which will be the same time this Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Also a great stream just for the conversation. Shout out to everybody who was involved. Grail, Pink Moon Neko, amazing to see both of you back, my friends. I hope that you enjoyed this, and it's nice to be clocking some regulars in our real-life JRPG party as well. It's the real-life conversations and skits that make all of this really fun and rewarding. Pizzicato 5, it was such a pleasure to see you back, my friend. It had been a minute, but really appreciated you, especially getting in on that conversation about what constitutes a JRPG and why and how that might or might not matter. So thank you for sharing your views there. Pink 420 Lightning Gaming, thanks so much for chiming in. I'm glad that you adore Tales of Berseria. If you were into our kind of different approach to playing it as a book club and reading it as we go along, I do hope to see you back, because we love these games and the medium of video game storytelling so much, and the company we keep is a big part of what makes it so valuable. So thank you all sincerely. It's a pleasure. The community is what makes it what it is. It takes a village. We love these stories so much at With a Terrible Fate. We think that this medium is not just the cutting edge of storytelling, but also a tremendous, and I would say still as yet untapped, opportunity to really empower people of all kinds through games and their storytelling to really think about their place in the world and what they want to do, and just the value of the life itself in new and rich and robust ways, in the way that all great art can, but in a way that I think especially stories that make meaning and narrative value out of your agency and your own role in them are uniquely poised to do. So love talking about that, love thinking about it, love it especially as it manifests in the Tales games, and the opportunity to talk through that all and feel through that all emotionally in the spirit of Tales of Berseria with all of you is such a joy. So thank you for those most recent adventures. Grail just figured out the best capstone for the screen, knocking off a boss in the challenge run-through that Grail is doing as a companion to the stream. So cheers to you, Grail. Great note to end on. Hopefully, I'm not going to make any promises, but maybe on Wednesday I'll finally have put Vesperia to bed too. So I may or may not have more comprehensive thoughts and reflections on that. No promises, but there is a promise to have some great adventures coming up in Berseria, so that'll be a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody. Such a joy, as always. I'm Aaron Suduko, your intrepid host and the founder of With a Terrible Fate. Go check out withaterriblefate.com for plenty of other content of all stripes, digging deep into the storytelling value and artistic language of your favorite video games. And I'll see you back here on Wednesday evening. Cheers, my friends.